Welcome to Flash Frights. You're listening to the Fan2Fan Podcast. Flash Frights, welcome back to the Fan2Fan Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Bernie Gonzalez. With me, as always, fellow co-host Pete Sharpnell. Pete, the year is 1978, a man that we reference just about on every episode, John Carpenter. Ladies and gentlemen, that's our John Carpenter reference.
Yes, sir. The check is in the mail, Mr. Carpenter.
That's right. He presents us with John Carpenter's Halloween, and the seismic shift begins. Madman, The Burning, Prom Night, Terror Train, and some folks are still in college and they're waiting to take their final exam, Pete, just a few days before maybe summer vacation. Unfortunately, they're on a campus that's being assaulted by a slasher, which brings us to the worst written intro to an episode I've ever done. And I didn't even write it, folks. Literally just thought about it.
Off the top of his head, everyone.
We're talking about 1981's Final Exam.
At Lanier College, they have the finest security, the best teacher-student relations, no fraternity hazing, strictly enforced curfews.
Shh. What was that?
And a killer. He's come back. Final Exam.
When are you going to realize that the whole world isn't made of psychopaths?
There's a murderer around campus killing people.
Some may pass the test.
Lisa!
God help the rest. Final Exam. He's come back.
A movie that was completely off my radar, Pete.
Well, you're welcome, Bernie. It's a service I like to provide to all my good friends. When I stumble across something that beggars belief, I don't want to be the only one experiencing it. Although I have to say, I experienced this watch with none other than John Zemsky, who's been a guest on the podcast several times before. We were, I guess your term may vary, like we were dumpster diving in the streaming service. One night trying to find something to, pass a couple of hours. And this one came up, and, there's just something about an early 80s slasher movie that we had never heard of before. This could just be one that we just missed on cable and in the video store, or this could be one that was buried for a reason and has only been resurrected now because streaming services need content and they'll throw just about anything on there. And either way, they got us and we watched it. I think the thing that I found most interesting about it, which I find interesting about a lot of movies from this era, if you're watching it through a later lens, it's not a prototype slasher, but it's, like you said, like this absolutely influenced by Halloween, Friday the 13th, but it still exists in that early days before the tropes became solidified. So there's a lot of stuff going on here that looks familiar, but is still like slightly off.
Yes. And I think it's like a by the numbers slasher now that we know what the numbers are. Something like Halloween set us up with the tropes, and Friday the 13th just kind of reinforced it. This movie really doesn't take any chances. Intruder, which is not a great slasher, but it's an interesting premise of a slasher hunting down a bunch of teenagers at a closed grocery store, or something like The Prowler. Some of those movies that came like right after Halloween and right after Final Exam, we can start now maybe taking a few chances and doing a few things that are different. This one feels so conservative. This is not good. It's not bad. It's almost exactly what you would expect, especially I imagine you and John watching this and never have seen this before.
Yeah, and it takes a while to get going, and there's a couple like just weird things going on. One of which is a prank terrorist attack on campus.
Van had a Gamma fraternity sticker on the back window. Oh, I should have known it was a fraternity prank.
Well, I'm proud to be a Gamma Pledge, sir. I mean, we're the best on campus.
That's what I like to hear.
At the time, no one batted an eye. But again, if you're watching this now, you're gonna be like, what the fuck was going on in the 80s?
The scene Pete's talking about, these people are literally taking what seems to be one of the many final exams in their last few days before summer break. We're introduced to all of the students, all of our main characters, some of which are part of a fraternity. We get the one Jim Belushi type character, Wild Man, a caricature out of Animal House. We get Radish, the nerd bookworm type character, Courtney, who ends up becoming our final girl. These people are all sitting in an auditorium taking this final exam, and the head of the fraternity, he's ill prepared for this test. Next thing you know, a brown van rolls up on the quad, and all of these guys jump out masked in balaclavas with M16s.
They have M16s.
Yes, and they just start gunning down all of these students that are walking on the quad, bodies dropping on the ground. People are running, hiding behind trees, ducking from their windows because of this gunfire. It's insane, Pete. You can't have that scene now. That scene would never be made now.
Again, this is a prank. It's not real. But even for the 80s, it serves no purpose for the movie, really. Our killer disappears for such a huge chunk of the early part of this movie. They must have felt like they need something to keep people's attention. And so someone's idea was let's just have a van of the frat guys roll up with M16s and balaclavas and just pretend gun down the student body. It's wild.
With the goal of just to give the head fraternity guy enough time to basically cheat on his test. And then, of course, after that, we discover it's a prank. That is more extreme than anything the killer does.
Sadly, that's really the only thing this movie is going to be remembered for.
This ain't the test I've been studying.
Have a nice holiday. I'll be seeing many of you back here next semester in remedial chemistry.
The killer is incredibly nondescript. He's not masked. He shot from the side a lot. He shot from behind a lot in silhouette, cloaked in shadows a bit. But there's other scenes where you just kind of see his face. He's kind of got a page boy haircut. He's wearing an army jacket and jeans. It's they watched Halloween. What they took from it was, we don't need to give this guy any motivation because the fact that he's killing people indiscriminately is going to be weird. But it's but you got to do some work.
If they had waited a year, they would have seen Halloween 2. Oh, they're relatives and Michael's obsessed. Okay, we should do that. But since this was made in between that period, they just decided exactly like you said, let's make the most indescript killer that for the most part just looks like a stuntman or a henchman.
You don't get the Dr. Loomis character that kind of builds up the mythos of him. He doesn't need to talk. He doesn't need to have the motivation, but it has to be counterbalanced by something that okay, give me an idea of what the stakes are. He just kind of strolls onto campus and just starts killing people. And it's okay, well, I guess that's one way to do it. We're never going to know why he's doing this. You're not even giving people breadcrumbs so that they can then make up in their own minds why he might be doing this, which is part of the fun and also makes it a little bit more effective rather than just he's here and he's killing people. Never says anything like you said, never even grunts in pain or anything like that. And it's there's nothing leading us to believe that he's got superhuman strength. That he's just a guy, maybe his student loans got rejected. Who knows? He's got a literal axe to grind. And he's going to grind it.
Any motivation for him, I think, is 100% inferred. That's why I had a few ideas. But again, for anyone that's listening to this, everything I'm about to say is complete bullshit because none of this is on the screen. It's only connecting dots because of the many horror movies that we've seen. Because they throw away a quick line and say that there was a young student who threw herself off the clock tower, the bell tower, the previous year. So my first thought when they threw out that completely random piece of knowledge as these two girls are talking on the bed, well, this must be the father or the brother who's coming onto the campus to get some sort of vengeance because his sister was allowed to become so depressed or something happened that I don't know who to target, so I'll target the entire student body. Those dots are never connected, so folks, I'm literally making this up.
We've all been the victim of a harmless college prank.
There's Radish, who, again, is set up as sort of like our always bullied nerd bookworm, gives you the sense that he might know a little bit more. Maybe he's behind this. But again, all the red herrings, none of them really make sense because Radish certainly is not the killer because we see enough of the killer to know it's not Radish. But he's also just kind of like an 80s nerd caricature. So I don't think he is so angry that he paid a guy to kill off all his bullies. Those dots don't make any sense. Anyone else who slighted, like say a former pledge that was hazed by this fraternity, because we do get the guy, the poor pledge who's literally tied to a tree and they put the shaving cream on him and
ice cubes down his underwear.
It's just like this guy, oh man, and he's just left out there like overnight tied to a tree. Is this a former fraternity pledge that's maybe coming back, get some bit of vengeance? None of that is in the movie, folks.
I'm just impressed you put the thought behind even coming up with this stuff.
Why is he killing these people? At least show me in the credits pictures or something to be like, oh, that's it.
Yeah, I don't even know if we were asking that. Like, there was a lot of like, what's going on here? Or like, when is this going to pick up? And I think by the end, we were just wanting it to be over and done with.
Call the police. I know I thought the other one was real, but this is different. There's a dead body right here.
Post watching this, I stumbled across a video, perked my ears up when I heard it. So Final Exam was written and directed by a guy named Jimmy Houston. And that name might not sound familiar. Didn't sound familiar to me when I first heard it. But then his first 3 films he directed were produced by none other than Earl Owensby, who's also starred in them. And as the aside goes here, you may have heard that Bernie and I are working on a book about the 80s 3D mini boom, a lot of which those films from the 80s were made by Earl Owensby and Earl Owensby Studios, which was based in Shelby, North Carolina. And so this movie has a lot of DNA with Earl Owensby, who was famously, in addition to being called the Cecil B. DeMacho of the South, was famously eschewing Hollywood and kind of making his own film world in the Carolinas. And, you know, Earl did a lot of like jumping on what was hot in Hollywood at the time. So he did like ripoffs of like Walking Tall.
For every Walking Tall, there was Challenge. For every Jaws, there was Rottweiler, a.k.a. Jaws with Paws.
Jaws with Paws, yeah. So it makes sense in 81 to be like, okay, well, we're going to jump on the slasher boom that's happening here, and we'll make one of those, but we'll do it super low budget. We'll do it in the Carolinas, take all the things that made those movies successful, and we'll just do it here in our own little world. Earl, we don't think is involved in this movie other than like there are some people from his crew that worked on this. But yeah, there was like that weird connection to me that started to make sense. It's like, okay, well, this is just another kind of Earl Owensby-esque exploitation of like just jumping on the trend. And it's not particularly memorable, but it's not really designed to be. Movies were basically made to be done fast and cheap, thrown up in the drive-in in the South, and turn a nice profit.
I'll give credit where credit's due. The video you sent me that's on YouTube, it's called The Story of Final Exam. It's by creator Leighton Eversole. Gives you a little bit more of a deep dive into a movie like this that neither one of us was familiar. And in some ways, watching a 30-minute, the story of Final Exam is almost more interesting than watching the movie itself. But I think for folks that really kind of want to dig into those dumpster dive, never watched, never heard of 80s slashers, I think they would do a disservice in not watching the movie and just watching the YouTube video. I found it more interesting watching Final Exam and then watching the YouTube video, and in some ways having a little bit more appreciation for it. Thank you, Earl, and thank you, John Carpenter, because Final Exam is literally the baby that they both made.
I think Earl wrote a 45-inch single about that sweet baby between him and John Carpenter.